The Art of Diplomatic Destruction. Captain James Doran stood before the massive viewscreen in the Sol Federation's primary diplomatic chamber, barely containing his mixture of amusement and horror. The Iran Confederacy's flagship rotated slowly in the holographic display, its sleek, porcelain-white hull gleaming under the artificial lighting. To the reptilian species that had designed it, the vessel represented the pinnacle of space warfare engineering, efficient, precise, and deadly. To Doran, it looked like someone had weaponized his grandmother's tea set. "That's not a weapon," he declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. "That's an insult, and we're here to fix that." The Iran delegation, seated across the conference table, bristled visibly. Their scales shifted in patterns that the translator bots interpreted as signs of agitation. The lead delegate, Vli, a towering reptilian with iridescent scales and sharp, intelligent eyes, leaned forward. Captain Doran, the translator rendered his guttural speech into crisp English, "Our vessels have served the Confederacy for over 200 cycles. They represent the perfect balance of form and function." Doran walked closer to the hologram, gesturing at the ship's elegant curves and minimal weapon emplacements. "Perfect balance. This thing has the defensive capabilities of wet cardboard. One solid hit from a railgun, and it'll crumple faster than a rookie's confidence during their first spacewalk." Lieutenant Sarah Ferris, standing at attention behind her captain, fought to maintain her professional composure. She'd worked with Doran long enough to know that his apparent lack of diplomatic tact was, ironically, his most effective diplomatic tool. The man had an uncanny ability to offend people into doing exactly what humanity needed them to do. The Iran delegation's agitation grew more pronounced. Vli's tail lashed back and forth, a motion that set the human security detail on edge. "Perhaps," Vli said carefully, "the captain misunderstands the fundamental principles of our combat doctrine. We rely on precision and speed, not brute force." "Precision?" Doran barked out a laugh. "Let me show you something about precision." He gestured, and the hologram changed to display a Sol Federation battleship. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. Where the Iran vessel was sleek and elegant, the human ship was a brutal testament to humanity's love affair with overwhelming firepower. Multiple layers of armor plating created a hulking silhouette, weapon emplacements bristled from every conceivable angle, and what appeared to be several experimental weapons systems had been enthusiastically bolted onto any available surface. "This," Doran announced with evident pride, "is the SFS Valiant Fury. Mid-range cruiser class, fresh out of the Sol shipyards. Notice anything different from your porcelain palace?" The Iran delegation stared at the hologram in what could only be described as horrified fascination. One of the younger delegates actually took a step backward. "It's certainly impressive," Vli managed to say, though the translator bot struggled to convey the complex mix of emotions in his voice. "Impressive? This is just the beginning." Doran's grin widened as he began highlighting various features of the human vessel. Triple-layered adaptive armor plating. Regenerative shield matrix. Point defense grid dense enough to turn incoming missiles into space confetti. And that's before we get to the fun stuff. "The fun stuff?" another Iran delegate asked, their translator bot adding a nervous quaver to the translation. "Oh yeah." Doran's eyes lit up with an almost manic gleam. "Antimatter torpedo launchers. Quantum disruption beams. And my personal favorite, the experimental plasma cascade cannon. Sure, it might occasionally overload and try to melt its own housing, but when it works." He made an explosive gesture with his hands. "Beautiful." Lieutenant Ferris cleared her throat. "Sir, perhaps we should focus on the matter at hand. The Iran Confederacy's request for assistance against the Hesh'kar Swarm." "I am focusing on the matter at hand, Lieutenant." Doran turned back to the Iran delegation. "Here's the situation, you've got a bug problem. A big one. The Hesh'kar are expanding into your territory, and your pretty little ships, for all their precision, can't put them down fast enough. That's why you're here, asking for humanity's help. Vli's scales shifted in what the translator interpreted as a grudging acknowledgement. The swarm's numbers are problematic. Problematic? Doran snorted. I've seen the reports. The Hesh'kar don't care about precision or efficiency. They throw ships at you until something breaks, and with your current fleet. He gestured at the hologram of the Iran flagship. Well, let's just say there's a lot of broken porcelain in your future. What exactly are you proposing, Captain? Vli's voice had taken on a dangerous edge. Doran's grin returned, wider than ever. I'm proposing we do what humanity does best, we take something elegant and refined, and we make it absolutely terrifying. With another gesture, he brought up a new hologram, a modified version of the Iran flagship. The sleek lines remained, but now they were augmented with layers of armor plating. Weapon emplacements dotted the hull, and several distinctly human-looking systems had been integrated into the design. It was as if someone had taken a piece of fine art and turned it into a weapon of mass destruction. Behold, Doran announced with theatrical flair, the future of the Iran fleet. Same precision, same efficiency, but with enough firepower to make a black hole nervous. The Iran delegation stared at the hologram in silence. Ferris could practically hear their minds racing, calculating the political implications, the cultural impact, the potential advantages and disadvantages. Finally, Vli spoke. This would require significant modifications to our entire fleet. Yep. Our crews would need extensive training. Also yep. The cost would be astronomical. Doran's expression turned serious for the first time since the meeting began. Less astronomical than losing your worlds to the swarm. We've fought bugs before, Vli. They don't care about cost or culture or tradition. They care about numbers, and right now, their numbers beat yours. But with these modifications? He gestured at the hologram. You might just have a chance. The conference room fell silent. The Iran delegation huddled together, their scaled heads bent in intense discussion. Translator bots hummed softly, converting their rapid-fire speech into something the humans could understand. Finally, Vli straightened to his full height. The Iran Confederacy accepts your proposal, Captain Doran. When can you begin? Doran's grin returned, and Ferris felt a shiver run down her spine. She knew that look. It was the same look he got just before something extremely expensive exploded. Oh, he said, we've already started. The engineering teams are standing by in the shipyard. By this time tomorrow, your flagship is going to be the proudest member of humanity's little backyard barbecue. As the Iran delegation filed out of the conference room, Ferris moved closer to her captain. Sir, are you sure about this? The modifications you're proposing, they're going to fundamentally change the Iran's entire approach to warfare. Doran watched the aliens leave, his expression thoughtful. That's exactly the point, Lieutenant. The universe is changing. The swarm is growing. If the Iran want to survive, they need to learn what humanity figured out centuries ago. And what's that, sir? His grin turned predatory. Sometimes, the most precise solution is simply to make something go boom. Really, really big boom. Outside the conference room, the sounds of heavy machinery being moved into position echoed through the station. Humanity's engineers were preparing for their newest challenge, and if there was one thing humans loved more than making things explode, it was making elegant alien technology explode even bigger. The Iran Confederacy was about to learn the human way of war, whether they were ready for it or not. When humans meet hardware. The Sol Federation shipyard was a symphony of controlled chaos. Sparks rained down from welding stations, the thunderous echo of impact drivers reverberated through the massive space, and the air was thick with the scent of ozone and heated metal. To the Iran crew watching their beloved flagship undergo its transformation, it looked like barely contained madness. To Chief Engineer Maria Santos, it was just another Tuesday. No, no, no. she shouted, waving her tablet at a team of engineers attempting to mount a plasma conduit. The Iran's power grid can't handle that kind of direct feed. We need to install the buffer array first, or we'll fry their whole system the first time they try to fire the main guns. The Iran's chief technical officer, a tall reptilian named Zex, watched with increasing alarm as humans swarmed over his ship like enthusiastic ants at a picnic. This was not what we expected, he muttered, his translator bot struggling to keep up with his agitated speech patterns. Maria turned to him, her face streaked with grease and her eyes bright with the special kind of madness that only human engineers possessed. Of course it wasn't. That's what makes it fun. Look at these power conduits. She pointed to the exposed innards of the ship. They're beautiful. Elegant. Efficient. Absolutely useless in a prolonged firefight. Our systems are perfectly calibrated, Zex began. For precision strikes and quick engagements, Maria finished. But the Hesh'kar don't fight that way. They'll keep coming until either they're dead or you are. And right now? She gestured at the ship's original defensive systems. You're going to be the dead ones. Above them, a team of engineers was carefully integrating a new shield matrix into the Iran's hull. The original design had emphasized energy efficiency over raw protective power. The human modifications would change that dramatically. Watch this, Maria said, pulling up a holographic simulation. This is your current shield configuration against a standard Hesh'kar barrage. The simulation showed the Iran shields flickering and failing after just 30 seconds of sustained fire. And this, she continued, her grin widening, is what we're installing. The simulation ran again. This time, the shields blazed with energy, absorbing the incoming fire and actually growing stronger as they redistributed the energy. Zex's scales shifted in what Maria had learned to recognize as surprise. That's impossible. The power requirements alone would overwhelm your current systems. Yes, Maria agreed. That's why we're completely overhauling your power grid. See these? She pointed to a series of massive devices being wheeled into the ship's engineering section. Antimatter catalyst chambers. They'll generate enough power to run the new shields, the weapon systems, and still have enough left over to make coffee. The Iran Confederacy does not drink coffee, Zex pointed out. You will after we're done here. Trust me, you're going to need it. Across the shipyard, Captain Doran was giving the Iran command crew a tour of their ship's new offensive capabilities. The original weapon emplacements had been augmented with what he lovingly referred to as humanity's greatest hits. And this, he said, patting a particularly massive turret, is what we call the party starter. Triple-barreled mass accelerator cannon. Fires depleted uranium slugs at a significant fraction of light speed. Technically, it's still a prototype, but it has not been fully tested. Vli interrupted, his translator bot conveying his alarm. Oh, it's been tested, Lieutenant Ferris assured him quickly. Just, not all at once. Or on a ship this size. Or with quite this much power behind it. That's what makes it exciting. Doran exclaimed. We're breaking new ground here. Pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Isn't that what space exploration is all about? I thought this was about defending against the Hesh'kar, another Iran officer noted dryly. Same thing, Doran waved dismissively. Exploration, explosion, they're practically the same word. Now, who wants to see the missile pods? Back in engineering, Maria was dealing with a minor crisis. The integration of human weapon systems had revealed an unexpected problem with the Iran structural integrity field. It's not that the field is weak, she explained to her team. It's that it's too rigid. The whole point of a structural integrity field is to flex and adapt. This thing's about as flexible as a politician's promises. The field has served us well for generations, Zex defended. Yeah, and chamber pots served humanity well for generations until someone invented indoor plumbing, Maria retorted. Sometimes tradition needs an upgrade. Kaplan. Get me the phase inverters. We're going to teach this field how to dance. As the modifications continued, the Iran crew began to notice something unusual. Despite the apparent chaos of the human engineering process, there was a method to their madness. Every modification, no matter how outrageous it seemed, was carefully calculated and integrated with existing systems. Even more surprisingly, the humans showed an almost reverent appreciation for Iran engineering. They just had very different ideas about how to use it. See this power distribution node? Maria pointed out to Zex. It's gorgeous. Perfectly calibrated. We're not replacing it, we're just adding a bypass system so when you need to dump emergency power to the weapons, you don't blow out half your ship's systems. You're preserving our original engineering. Of course we are. We're crazy, not stupid. Your tech is amazing. We're just helping it reach its full potential. As the day wore on, the Iran flagship began to take on a distinctly different appearance. The sleek hull was now augmented with armored plates, weapon mounts bristled from strategic points, and the engine section hummed with power that would have been unthinkable in its original configuration. But perhaps the most significant change was happening among the crew themselves. The Iran officers, initially horrified by the human modifications, began to show signs of interest. Some even started asking questions. This targeting system, one of them asked Maria, it can track multiple targets simultaneously. Up to 300 separate targets, Maria confirmed. And that's before we activate the AI assistance protocols. And these point defense turrets, they're automated. Fully autonomous. They'll track and eliminate incoming projectiles without any input needed from the crew. Leaves you free to focus on the bigger threats. Even Vli, despite his initial skepticism, found himself drawn into discussions about tactical applications of the new systems. Doran was more than happy to elaborate. The key, he explained, is layered defense. Your original design focused on avoiding hits entirely. That's great until something actually connects. Our approach. He gestured at the modified ship. Let them hit you. Let them hit you hard. Then hit back harder. It seems excessive, Vli admitted. That's humanity's middle name, Doran grinned. Well, actually it's hold my beer and watch this, but excessive works too. As the day drew to a close, the Iran flagship had been transformed. It retained its elegant lines and efficient design, but now there was something more, a sense of barely contained power, like a predator ready to pounce. Tomorrow, Maria announced to the assembled crews, we begin weapons testing. I suggest everyone get some rest. She paused, then added with a grin, and maybe update your wills. The Iran crew exchanged nervous glances as their translator bots processed this last statement. They were beginning to understand that when humans smiled like that, something interesting was about to happen. And by interesting, they were learning, humans usually meant explosive. They had no idea how right they were. When things go boom. The testing range of the Seoul Federation shipyard stretched across an empty sector of space, dotted with asteroid fields and decommissioned satellites. Perfect for what Captain Doran called enthusiastic weapons verification. Target practice, Lieutenant Ferris corrected. Same thing, Doran replied from his position on the Iran flagship's newly modified bridge. The command center had undergone significant changes. Holographic displays now surrounded the command chair, tactical readouts flickered across multiple screens, and what was once a serene workspace now hummed with barely contained power. Vli stood beside him, his scaled hands hovering over the modified control interfaces. These changes, they feel wrong. That's because you're thinking like an Iran, Doran said. Stop being precise. Start thinking like a human. That's what worries me. The first test was relatively simple, a demonstration of the new shield matrix. A remote-controlled drone approached, armed with standard-issue railguns. Beginning shield test, Maria's voice came over the comm. Remember, if anything starts glowing red, that's probably bad. Probably. Zek's question from his engineering station. Unless it's supposed to glow red. Then it's fine. How do we know? The drone opened fire. Multiple railgun rounds streaked toward the ship, each carrying enough kinetic energy to punch through the original Iran shields like paper. The new shield matrix flared to life, absorbing the impacts with a display of energy that lit up the sector. Shield strength at 110%, Maria reported gleefully. The absorption matrices are working better than expected. 110%. Vli's translator bot struggled to convey his confusion. How can it be above maximum capacity? That's the beauty of it, Maria explained. The new system doesn't just block incoming fire, it uses the energy to reinforce itself. The harder they hit us, the stronger we get. That's... Vli paused. That's not how physics works. Not with that attitude, it isn't. The next test focused on offensive capabilities. The modified Iran flagship now bristled with weapons that would have been considered excessive by most species standards. By human standards, it was a good start. Target Cluster Alpha, Doran commanded. Let's try out the new main gun. The ship's primary weapon, once a precise energy lance capable of surgical strikes, had been augmented with what the human engineers called the problem solver. It resembled the original weapon in the same way a supernova resembled a campfire. Energy levels stable, Maria reported. Antimatter catalysts online. Reality distortion field nominal. Reality distortion field. Zexa's scales paled. When did we install a... Firing. Doran announced with evident joy. The ship shuddered as the main gun discharged. A beam of energy, visible despite the vacuum of space, lanced out toward the target cluster. Where it struck, space itself seemed to ripple. When the light faded, the asteroid field was simply gone. Beautiful, Doran whispered, wiping away what might have been a tear. Where? Vli swallowed hard. Where did the asteroids go? That's an excellent question. Maria replied. Current theories include another dimension, a parallel universe, or they were simply converted into their base atomic components and scattered across several light years. You don't know. That's what makes it exciting. The tests continued throughout the day. The point defense system proved capable of turning incoming missiles into spectacular fireworks displays. The new armor plating shrugged off impacts that would have crippled the original design. And the emergency protocols. We've lost power to the main grid. Maria announced during one particularly intense simulation. Activating backup systems, Zex responded, his claws dancing across the modified controls. Backup systems not responding. Initiating emergency protocols. The ship's lights flickered, then blazed back to life as several systems that definitely weren't in the original specifications kicked in. What just happened? Vli demanded. Triple redundant power grid, Maria explained proudly. If the main system fails, the backup kicks in. If that fails, the emergency system activates. If that fails, we've got a mini fusion reactor that basically tells physics to take a vacation. And if that fails? Then we've got bigger problems than power generation, Doran chuckled. Like whatever managed to take out 4 separate power systems. As the day progressed, the Iran crew began to show signs of adaptation. Where once they moved with precise, measured movements, now they were learning to embrace the controlled chaos of human combat doctrine. Multiple targets, bearing 03 Mark II. Vli called out during a simulated swarm attack. Solution? Doran asked. Vli's hand hovered over the weapon's controls. The precise, surgical strike that was Iran doctrine warred with the new possibilities before him. Then, slowly, a very human-like grin spread across his scaled face. All of them, he said and pressed the button. The resulting explosion was visible from 3 systems away. Now you're getting it. Doran laughed. But not everything went smoothly. During the final test of the day, something unexpected happened. Energy spike in the main gun. Maria's voice carried a note of concern that made everyone's scales, or skin, for the humans, crawl. Source. Zex demanded. The reality distortion field is feeding back into the antimatter catalysts. It's creating some kind of resonance. The ship began to vibrate. Alerts flashed across multiple screens. Shut it down. Vli ordered. Working on it. Maria replied. The emergency protocols are, wait, that's not supposed to happen. What's not supposed to happen? A sound like reality hiccuping echoed through the ship. For a brief moment, everyone saw themselves from 3 different angles simultaneously. Well, Doran said as normal space reasserted itself, that was interesting. Interesting? Vli's translator bot managed to convey an impressive amount of sarcasm. We nearly tore a hole in space-time. Nearly being the operative word, Doran pointed out. Besides, now we know what not to do. And what's that? Don't cross the streams. I thought everyone knew that. As the testing day drew to a close, the modified Iran flagship had proven itself to be something entirely new, a hybrid of precision engineering and human excess, elegant design and overwhelming firepower. Tomorrow, Doran announced to the assembled crew, we start the real work. The rest of your fleet isn't going to upgrade itself. The Iran crew looked at their ship, then at each other. They had started the day as precise, methodical warriors. They were ending it as something else, something that understood why humans grinned when things exploded. The Hesh'kar weren't going to know what hit them. Assuming, of course, they could keep the ship from accidentally creating any more temporal anomalies. But that, as humans like to say, was tomorrow's problem. Converting the converts. The news spread through the Iran fleet like wildfire. Their flagship hadn't just survived the human modifications, it had emerged as something unprecedented. Within days, ship captains who had initially recoiled at the idea of human engineering were practically fighting for spots in the upgrade queue. It's like watching a religion spread, Lieutenant Ferris observed from the shipyard's control center. Below, dozens of Iran vessels waited their turn as human engineering teams swarmed over their hulls. More like an addiction, Captain Doran replied. Did you see the transmission from Captain Kex? His exact words were, make mine explode bigger. The Iran fleet's transformation was happening faster than anyone had anticipated. What started as reluctant acceptance had evolved into enthusiastic participation. Iran engineers, once horrified by human modifications, now worked alongside their human counterparts, offering suggestions that sometimes made even the humans pause. Sir, an Iran officer approached Doran, his scales practically vibrating with excitement. We've been studying the antimatter catalyst design, and we believe we can improve its efficiency by integrating it with our existing power distribution network. Improve how? By approximately 47.3%. Doran's eyebrows shot up. That would make the main guns significantly more devastating, the officer confirmed, his translator bot somehow managing to convey a tone of unholy glee. I've created monsters, Doran whispered proudly. The Iran's natural tendency toward precision, when combined with human innovation, produced results that surprised everyone. Their ships, once poetry in motion, became deadly war sonnets. Each vessel retained its elegant design while housing enough firepower to make a small sun nervous. But not everyone was thrilled with the changes. The Iran High Command has expressed concerns, Vli reported during a strategy meeting. They worry we're losing our cultural identity. Nonsense, Doran countered. You're not losing anything, you're evolving. Besides, your cultural identity will be a lot easier to preserve if you're not all dead. A demonstration for the High Command was arranged. The modified flagship, along with two newly upgraded cruisers, performed a series of maneuvers that showcased both traditional Iran precision and new human-inspired capabilities. The deciding moment came when they simulated a Hesh'kar Swarm attack. Where once the Iran ships would have been overwhelmed by sheer numbers, the upgraded vessels turned the simulation into a spectacular light show of destruction. Impressive, one of the high command members admitted. But these modifications, they're so effective? Doran suggested. Human, the commander finished, though their translator bot suggested the word wasn't entirely a criticism anymore. As more ships were modified, new challenges emerged. The human tendency to push boundaries began to influence Iran tactical doctrine in unexpected ways. During one training exercise, an Iran captain discovered that by cycling their shield harmonics in a specific pattern, they could create a feedback loop that turned their defensive system into an offensive weapon. "That's not possible," Maria declared when she heard about it. Then, after reviewing the data, "That's not supposed to be possible. That's actually brilliant. Terrifying, but brilliant." The Iran crew had taken human innovation and applied their precision to it, creating something entirely new. They weren't just learning to use human technology, they were improving it. But with innovation came risk. The more ships that were modified, the more chances for something to go wrong. And go wrong it did, spectacularly. It started with a routine test of a newly upgraded light cruiser. The ship's captain, eager to prove their vessel's capabilities, pushed the systems beyond recommended limits. "Energy readings are off the scale." Maria's voice crackled over the emergency channel. "They've created some kind of cascade effect in the weapon systems." The cruiser's hull began to glow with an inner light that definitely wasn't part of the design specifications. Reality around the ship started to bend in ways that made observers' eyes water. "Shut it down," Doran ordered. "We can't," came the response. "The systems are locked in a feedback loop. It's like the ship is trying to punch a hole in space-time." "That's not supposed to happen until at least the third refit," Doran muttered. What followed was a frantic race against time as human and Iran engineers worked together to prevent a disaster. The Iran's precision combined with human creativity produced a solution that shouldn't have worked, did work, and made several physicists cry when they read the report. "Good news," Maria announced afterward. "We saved the ship." "Bad news, I think we accidentally invented a new form of faster-than-light travel." "How is that bad news?" "Because we have no idea how we did it, and 3 different research departments are already fighting over the patents." The incident served as a valuable lesson. The Iran learned that human innovation needed to be tempered with their traditional caution, while the humans learned that Iran precision could turn their wild ideas into controlled reality. As the fleet's transformation continued, something else became apparent. The Iran weren't just adapting to human technology, they were developing their own unique style. It was precision with power, elegance with overwhelming force. "They're becoming something new," Ferris observed as she watched an Iran destroyer perform maneuvers that combined their traditional grace with human-inspired firepower. "That's the point," Doran replied. "The universe is changing. The Hesh'kar are just the beginning. If humanity's going to survive out here, we need allies who understand both precision and power." "And if the Iran High Command objects?" Doran grinned. "Have you seen their faces when the big guns fire? Trust me, they're not objecting anymore." The transformation of the Iran fleet was more than just a technical upgrade, it was a cultural evolution. They were learning that sometimes the most precise solution was the biggest explosion, and that efficiency could be measured in crater size. As the last ship in the fleet received its modifications, Vli approached Doran with what his translator bot identified as a mix of resignation and amusement. "We may need to update our military doctrine," he said. "The current version doesn't account for, what did you call it? Explosive problem solving?" "Yes, that." The Iran fleet was ready. The Hesh'kar were about to learn that precision and power weren't mutually exclusive. And somewhere in the depths of space, reality was still trying to figure out what had happened during that light cruiser incident. When humanity meets hive mind. The Hesh'kar Swarm arrived exactly as predicted, without warning, without mercy, and in numbers that darkened space itself. Well, Captain Doran observed from the Iran flagship's bridge, they certainly know how to make an entrance. The modified Iran fleet hung in formation, their newly upgraded hulls gleaming under the light of distant stars. What had once been elegant teacups were now elegant teacups bristling with enough firepower to make a small galaxy nervous. Swarm vessels approaching, Lee announced, his claws dancing over the tactical display. Their numbers are significant. That's one word for it, Lieutenant Ferris muttered. The sensor readings showed thousands of Hesh'kar ships, their biomechanical hulls moving with the coordinated precision of insects defending their hive. Remember your training, Doran broadcast to the fleet. Precision when needed, power when necessary, and if something looks important, make it explode. The Iran commanders acknowledged with a unity that would have been impossible weeks ago. Their traditional precision had been augmented with human creativity, creating something entirely new. The swarm struck first. Thousands of energy beams lanced through space, a coordinated strike that would have shattered the old Iran shields instantly. Instead, the modified shield matrices flared to life, not just absorbing the attack but growing stronger. Shield strength at 140%. Maria's voice crackled over the comm, the absorption matrices are working better than we hoped. Return fire, Lee ordered, and the Iran fleet demonstrated exactly what happened when you combined precision targeting with human-scale weapons. The main guns fired. Reality shuddered. Several Hesh'kar ships simply ceased to exist, while others found themselves suddenly occupying slightly different dimensions than they'd started in. I think we accidentally created a new type of physics again, Maria reported cheerfully. File it for later, Doran replied. Right now, we've got bugs to squash. The battle quickly evolved into something unprecedented. The Hesh'kar Swarm, used to overwhelming their enemies with sheer numbers, found themselves facing an opponent that combined Iran tactical precision with humanity's love for excessive firepower. A light cruiser, cornered by dozens of swarm ships, activated its new diplomatic protocols, a weapons system that technically violated several laws of thermodynamics. The resulting explosion created a temporary aurora visible from 3 systems away. That's not supposed to be possible, an Iran science officer observed. Welcome to fighting alongside humans, Ferris replied. The impossible is just something that hasn't exploded properly yet. But the swarm was far from defeated. As one massive bioship approached the Iran flagship, its chitinous armor seemed to absorb all light. Energy readings are off the scale, Maria reported. They've adapted to our weapons. Have they adapted to this? Vli asked, and activated the system that the Iran engineers had created by combining their power distribution network with human antimatter catalysts. The resulting beam of energy didn't just destroy the swarm ship, it rewrote the local laws of physics in protest of what it had been asked to do. Note to self, Doran muttered, never underestimate what happens when you combine Iran precision with human insanity. The battle raged for hours. The swarm, for the first time in its history, found itself facing an enemy that could match its numbers with pure destructive potential. Every time it adapted to one weapon, the Iran-human hybrid fleet would unveil something even more physics-defying. They're retreating, Ferris announced as the surviving swarm ships began to pull back. We actually did it. Of course we did, Doran replied. We had precision, power, and... He paused as several reality distortion warnings flashed across his screen. And we might want to clear the area before that temporal cascade reaches us. As the fleet regrouped at a safe distance, watching space itself try to sort out what had just happened to it, Lee approached Doran. The Iran High Command has sent a message, he said. Oh. They wish to discuss permanent modifications to our military doctrine. Vli's translator bot somehow managed to convey both resignation and amusement. They were particularly impressed by the reality warping capabilities. Just wait until they see what we can do with proper funding, Doran grinned. I've got some ideas about quantum tunneling that'll make today look tame. The Iran fleet had changed forever. What had started as a reluctant acceptance of human modifications had evolved into something new, a perfect blend of precision and power, elegance and excess. You know, Maria's voice came over the comm, we should probably figure out what to do about that new dimension we accidentally created. Tomorrow, Doran replied. Today, we celebrate. Who's up for teaching the Iran crew about the human tradition of victory parties? As the fleet headed home, their modified hulls still humming with power, the universe had learned an important lesson: never underestimate what happens when you combine Iran precision with human creativity. And somewhere in the newly created dimension, physics was still trying to figure out exactly what had hit it. The end. Epilogue. 3 months later, the Iran Human Joint Engineering Corps unveiled their first collaborative project, a ship that could technically be classified as a war crime in 17 different jurisdictions. The Hesh'kar Swarm filed a formal complaint, citing excessive enthusiasm in the application of explosive solutions. The complaint was filed in triplicate, with precise Iran documentation and human-style annotations that mostly consisted of drawings of explosions. Some say that's when the real fun began.